A new bill proposes an increase in rewards to help catch criminals. How it could conflict with an existing bill and the safety concerns being raised.
They put the community at risk in both ways.
A deal shrouded in secrecy. How new documents on the mayor's conduit deal show the city was trying to keep things quiet.
We have work to do, but it is very important to know who this cohort was and what they went through.
State school leaders blame the pandemic for falling graduation rates. The concerning data found by FOX45 News Project Baltimore that shows the decline started much sooner.
I'm tired of seeing people dying.
Residents fed up with the endless bloodshed on city streets. As leaders hold a public safety meeting, our team demands answers on the rise in youth violence.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. From Baltimore City to Baltimore County and Annapolis. Fox 45 News demanding answers from our elected leaders about violent crime impacting the entire state.
It comes on the heels of a 6th Baltimore City public school student gunned down in Baltimore City on Monday, just 2 weeks after another city school student was killed in Towson.
Fox 45's Vincent Hill pressed city council members for answers today. We'll hear from him at 10:30.
Rebecca Pryor is questioning Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski. But our team coverage begins with Jeff Abel. He joins us live right now with the concerns over crime bills working their way through Annapolis. Jeff?
Well, right now, only about a third of all homicides in this city are being solved. In many cases, witnesses are simply too afraid to come forward. And now lawmakers in Annapolis are debating whether $50,000 would be enough to gain their cooperation. Throughout this city, wherever there's violence, there's an urgent cry for help.
And could be eligible for a reward.
Authorities are offering an $8,000 reward.
You could earn $10,000.
But few people appear to be responding. On average, Metro Crime Stoppers pays out a little more than $6,000 each year in reward funds, in a city where more than 300 people are killed each year.
You're in a city where you're afraid of both the cops and the robbers. You're essentially paralyzed.
This proposal seeks to raise the current rewards that we give out in Baltimore and indeed in Maryland.
So to encourage witnesses to come forward, one Annapolis lawmaker is proposing a statewide reward fund, one which would provide anyone with information leading to the arrest of a murder suspect a reward of up to $50,000.
We want to make it so that way people can have that incentive if they don't want to stay in that neighborhood where they could be victimized as a consequence, that they have that option to make a change.
Even if it was $1 million, would I really risk my life for that?
Some critics question whether fatter rewards will prompt witnesses to come forward. 20 years ago, gang members tried to intimidate witnesses by producing a stop snitching video.
Rats on wheels. I mean, you serve information.
But the bigger problem, say critics, is the current perceived soft on crime climate in Annapolis, one where some lawmakers want to bar any accused killer under 25 from facing felony murder charges.
24-year-old or 23-year-old can commit a murder and get away with it, and then you expect people to come forward with information involving that murder, and it's 1,000% guarantee that they will be killed because there will be no consequences for people under 24.
Well, Metro Crime Stoppers typically pays a maximum of $2,000 for information. Last year, Baltimore City voted to raise that to $8,000. We're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
What this is designed to do really, again, is to send a message that this state is no longer going to tolerate violent crime.
State Republicans are pushing the Violent Firearms Offender Act. It's the same bill former Governor Larry Hogan pushed 2 years in a row. It would impose mandatory minimums for felony crimes using guns and impose stricter penalties for repeat violent offenders. Lawmakers held a hearing on that bill today.
We all share the same concerns when it comes to crime, keeping communities safe. And I believe this bill, which is designed to go after repeat violent offenders, it really does help move the needle in achieving those goals.
While the bill has passed in the House, it's never cleared the Senate. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost asked former Governor Hogan, about that during a sit-down interview yesterday.
didn't clear the House while you were in office. Do you think that they're barking up the wrong tree with this bill that didn't see success in the past, or do you think it's worth it?
No, I think it's absolutely worth it. I think it's one of the most important things we can possibly do, which is why we pushed for it every year.
Well, the former governor went on to praise City State's Attorney Ivan Bates for pushing a bill that would allow for tougher sentences for some gun offenders. You can find Mackenzie's entire interview with the former governor on our YouTube page. Just search for Fox Baltimore. You can make your voice heard. Scan the QR code on your screen to contact your state delegates and senators. That will take you to our website where we've listed phone numbers and email addresses.
Well, Fox 45 News pressing Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski about where he stands on crime-fighting legislation in Annapolis. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor continues our team coverage.
Well, Olszewski has been quick to say he will do everything in his power to hold violent offenders accountable, but those efforts seem to be stopping short when asked to weigh in on proposed gun legislation. From shootings and a stabbing to a disturbing rape, a string of violent attacks near the Towson Circle.
You see a lot of people doing a lot of things down here they shouldn't be doing.
Putting Baltimore County residents on edge and calling for change.
It's becoming a very unsafe place to live.
I don't want to say you can't feel safe anywhere, but
Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski.
I will do whatever it takes to make sure that we, again, both are safe and that people feel safe in their neighborhoods and their communities.
Responding by upping patrols within Towson's Central Entertainment District, along with a slew of new crime-fighting strategies.
We did step up our patrols, both on foot. We're looking at bike patrols, more cameras, more lights, additional license plate readers. So we are really taking proactive measures.
But what about backing bills in Annapolis designed to address violent crime across the state? The Gun Violence Accountability Act would increase penalties for illegally possessing a firearm from 3 years to 5 years. And the Gun Theft Felony Act would change the consequences of stealing a handgun from a misdemeanor to a felony. Earlier this week, Fox 45 asked if Olszewski supports those bills. His answer was vague.
I don't know that we've weighed in specifically on those pieces of legislation, but we support legislators taking action to make sure our communities are safe.
So on Wednesday, Fox 45 sending Olszewski the specific legislation and again asking if he supports the bills. His office still not taking a stance. In a statement, his spokesperson Reading Park, quote, "While we have not taken a position on these specific efforts, we're closely monitoring discussions in Annapolis and welcome the opportunity to work with legislators." But according to political analyst John Deedy, the opportunity is there. It's Olszewski's choice to stay silent, a move Deedy's calling a mistake.
If I was giving political advice, I would come out in favor of this type of legislation because people in Baltimore County are scared of the crime in Baltimore City coming into their communities.
Deedy says right now, violence is top of mind for most voters, many of whom are tired of waiting for progressive policies to make an impact and are ready for a crackdown on crime.
Social justice is a wonderful idea and wonderful concept, but people want to see action that seems quicker and immediate. They don't want to see something that, well, in 10 years we'll have an idea how well this worked.
And many of those crime bills will be up for debate in the coming weeks, with crossover day quickly approaching and many of them still stuck in committee. Reporting in Baltimore, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
And this brings us to our question of the day. Should Johnny Olszewski be involved in crime policies in Annapolis? So far, 100% of voters say yes. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Click on the Pulse tab to weigh in.
Tonight, city leaders are split over the conduit deal negotiated between Mayor Brandon Scott and BGE, a deal that two Board of Estimates members and council members say left them out of the loop.
The council president, city comptroller, and many council members are still at odds with the mayor over this deal that they say is shrouded in secrecy.
Now, Fox 45 News has obtained documents showing how the city was trying to keep that contract quiet. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost explains.
There's a lot of new information, and I want to walk you through it using our whiteboard. We know the city has already cashed a $14 million check from BGE. That was part of that controversial conduit contract. While the debate continues over whether that conduit contract was actually approved during the February 15th Board of Estimates meeting, these documents obtained by Fox 45 News really shed some light into how much the city did to keep that conduit deal under wraps. And here's a new player in this conversation, David Ralph. He's the general counsel for BGE and has been since 2021. But before that, he was the top attorney for the city and helped negotiate the contract between these two in 2016. Here's an email from David Ralph sent to the city, including Jim Shea, who used to be the city solicitor. And remember that name because we'll come back to it. But in this email, dated November 15th, 2022, it outlines a non-disclosure agreement between BGE and the city all over this conduit deal. Here's a copy of that draft agreement between the city and BGE over the conduit deal. Let me put up just the front page on the whiteboard. According to the emails that we have, it shows that people within BGE and City Hall spent weeks going over the language of the conduit deal itself, as well as the NDA, and eventually, Ebony Thompson got involved. Thompson is the acting city solicitor. She took over when the previous solicitor retired in January. And going over the conduit deal itself, we have a few key takeaways. BGE does not have to comply with Baltimore's local hiring rule. It gives power from the city's conduit division to BGE to determine what conduit projects are completed, and it also gives BGE flexibility to determine where to do conduit repair. David Ralph isn't the only one with connections to BGE and the city. This is Jim Shea. He's the former city solicitor, but he also used to be the chairman of the law firm Venable, the same firm that helped BGE's parent company Exelon merge with Pepco in 2016. And that brings us back to Ebony Thompson, because she also used to work at the same law firm as Jim Shea. And according to her LinkedIn, she too worked on that Exelon-Pepco merger in 2016. And then there's Calvin Butler. He is the CEO of Exelon, but he was with BGE at the same time that Shea was working with Venable, helping everybody with that merger. The city council continues to hold investigative hearings into this contract between BGE and the city. There was another hearing on Tuesday night, really highlighting the divide between some members of City Hall, especially of the council, and the mayor himself.
This vote is valid.
The deal was not executed.
This is a done deal. We're acting on the deal.
And now we have City Comptroller Bill Henry and Council President Nick Mosby both maintaining that because they boycotted that Board of Estimates meeting on February 15th, that the contract between the city and BGE isn't actually finalized. Now there's some debate about whether the state attorney general will get involved in this issue, but either way, there are still some questions about who was really pushing for this deal between the city and BGE. Now, we've submitted a public records request to get more information and more emails between the mayor's office, the solicitor's office, and people within BGE to find out exactly the timeline of this conduit deal. Now, legally, that means the city will be forced to turn over some information. So far, we haven't gotten anything, but we will continue to push for those records. At the Accountability Desk, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
We'd like to know what you think. Do you believe politicians always act in your best interest? So far, 67% of voters say no. You can head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
All right, a little bit of a chill setting up tonight. Temperatures down already through the 40s at BWI, as well as at Aberdeen and Annapolis. Easton, you're at 43 and even a 39 with clear skies at Westminster. And it remains clear overnight on the hour-by-hour forecast, dipping down well into the 30s, maybe near 30 by early in the morning, and then beginning to vault back up through the 40s, probably into the 50s tomorrow afternoon. But there could be some snow in our forecast. We're going to be tracking when that could get here, coming up in my Weather Authority forecast in minutes.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. Fox 45 News continues to examine what's being done to protect children in the face of rising juvenile violence. What happened when we pressed city council members for answers. Also ahead tonight, a major health concern in Seattle. Drivers tell our Sinclair sister station people are smoking fentanyl on city buses. Why they say that's putting everybody at risk. And right after the break, Maryland's graduation rates hit a 9-year low. Many blame it on the pandemic. Project Baltimore's latest report shows that might not be the case.
Fewer Maryland students are graduating high school within 4 years, according to recently released state data.
While many school leaders say the pandemic had a significant impact, Project Baltimore's Chris Papst found the four-year graduation rate actually dropped more before COVID than after.
But this cohort is one for the history books in terms of who they are and what they went through.
At this state school board meeting last week, Maryland State Superintendent Dr. Mohammed Chaudhry faced a harsh reality. Maryland's four-year graduation rate has hit a 9-year low.
No one in this room had a high school experience similar to what this cohort had. Maybe, I'm pretty sure. I'm thinking through all the pandemics of the last years.
While many, including Dr. Chaudhry, have blamed the pandemic, Project Baltimore analyzed the data and found four-year graduation rates were going down before COVID hit. From 2017 to 2019, the 3 years before the pandemic, the four-year graduation rate in Maryland dropped 0.8%. In the 3 years since COVID, it actually went down less, just 0.5%.
We had glows, we also had grows, but we also have challenges, and we need to break the 90% threshold for all subgroups.
And some subgroups were more impacted than others. Graduation rates are based on cohorts, the number of students who earn a diploma in 4 years, beginning in 9th grade, and adjusting for any students who transfer in or out of the school. Baltimore County's four-year graduation rate fell to 84.5% in 2022, a 10-year low. Kenwood, Patapsco, and Chesapeake high schools saw the largest drops in the county.
We have work to do, but it is very important to know who this cohort was and what they went through.
At 68.7%, Baltimore City had the lowest four-year graduation rates in Maryland, followed by Prince George's County at 76.6%. From there, the next lowest graduation rate jumps up to 81.4%. in Somerset County.
Yes, the pandemic accelerated the rate of decline in the pace of learning. That's true.
Anaban Basu is an economist and former member of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners.
But we've been seeing assessments of test scores, for instance, declining since 2013.
In 2021, Maryland's legislature passed the Kerwin Plan, also known as the blueprint for Maryland's future. It pumps billions of additional tax dollars into public education. Education leaders say the extra money will improve student outcomes. But Basu says if Maryland wants better outcomes, more money alone is not the answer. He says school systems must be given more freedoms to part ways with underperforming teachers, who are often protected by the teachers' unions.
You need professionals, people who are highly competent, and you need no patience for people who cannot deliver great service to our kids. But again, you've got a lot of adults in the way.
Basu also says for Maryland schools to truly succeed, parents need to be more involved, something money cannot buy.
A lot of this is about family dynamics. If the parents are not engaged, education just doesn't work out as well. So a number of issues inside the school buildings and outside the school buildings that lead to these very poor results, these very poor outcomes. And until you resolve some of this, the taxpayer can expect to spend more money and get less for their dollars.
I'm Chris Papst, and this is Project Baltimore.
The Kerwin Plan is the largest education spending increase in Maryland's history. $30 billion additional tax dollars over the first 10 years, $4 billion additional dollars every year after that. But this is not the first time Maryland has overhauled public education. A little over 20 years ago, the legislature passed what was at that time the Bridge to Excellence Act, or the Thornton Plan as it was known. Back then, Maryland was spending $8,921 per student per year, according to U.S. Census data, about $900 more than the national average. But Thornton dramatically increased that amount. By 2017, Maryland was spending $16,835 per pupil, which was $2,562 more than the national average of $14,273. As taxes went up, advocates said more money would make schools better and more equitable. So did it make a difference? In 2002, when Thornton passed, Maryland's four-year graduation rate was 3 points above the national average.
And we're going to take a look at a graph. The blue bars are Maryland's four-year graduation rates. The yellow line across the top is the national average, which is only available through 2019. By that year, Maryland's four-year graduation rate has gone up to 86.9%. But on average, the rest of America did better, too. Even with the extra funding, Maryland's four-year graduation rate in 2019 was just 0.9% above the national average.
Seattle bus drivers sound an alarm about drug use on city buses. Why, they say it's dangerous for everybody on board, and what's being done about it.
And I mentioned a couple of minutes ago the potential of some rain and some snow in our forecast, and there it is, Friday into Saturday. Let's go ahead and plan it out, as temperatures should be mainly above freezing. That could do some things with the potential of accumulation, but as we head through the future scan Friday afternoon into early Saturday, that green and the blue, that's that rain going to some snow mix in there. I'm going to let you know how much you may see and what actually could be impacting it besides the rain and snow coming down. My Weather Authority forecast.
A big problem on buses in Seattle. People smoking fentanyl. Now there are questions about whether the smoke is creating a health hazard for drivers and riders.
In fact, one driver is telling our Sinclair sister station in Seattle drug use is out of control. Jeremy Harris has the story.
I just enjoy driving the bus.
Stevan Williams is proud to be a driver for the King County Metro bus system.
It still is a great job besides the fentanyl smoking on the bus.
But he says nobody should be proud of the way things are on buses in Seattle right now.
You have people on there smoking right beside passengers, right beside mothers with little children.
It's understandable that drivers and passengers are worried about being next to fentanyl smoke. But amazingly, some King County health officials seem to suggest it isn't a problem at all.
We're not seeing folks developing secondhand exposure from catching, from
this is just not happening.
In a Metro Transit meeting last year, Thea Oliphant-Wells from King County Public Health said there's no data to suggest fentanyl smoke is a hazard to riders or drivers. And in fact, she said smoking in public is safer for the fentanyl user.
We want people to be using in a place where if they overdose, they can be discovered.
According to the health department's website, there's no real risk for the everyday person being exposed to secondhand opioid smoke. For a week, we've asked to speak with the health department, but they declined an interview, despite their claims that media gets it wrong when covering fentanyl dangers.
We have so much false reporting around fentanyl. There's a lot of misinformation that's out there.
Metro numbers show there were 1,885 reports of drug use on buses in 2022. 52 bus operators reported being exposed to smoke from drugs, and 16 bus drivers filed for workman's comp due to chemical exposure.
This isn't secondhand smoke. This is smoke being lit on aluminum foil that's coming directly into the air that us bus drivers are breathing. And it makes me really, really sick.
Stevan says he knows the impact that fentanyl smoke is having on his own health. He's currently on leave for medical testing.
I don't want to be put in a predicament where I'm around drugs every day on my job that I didn't sign up for.
And he says unless something changes, he's not sure he'll be back in the driver's seat.
It's for the drug users. They're looked out for first.
In Seattle, I'm Jeremy Harris reporting.
Well, Fox 45 News is demanding answers from city leaders after a 16-year-old is shot and killed near his high school. What happened when we brought residents' concerns right to them?
His light is still shining in our lives.
An emotional vigil in East Baltimore for the man killed in a crash in a building that collapsed a month ago. How he's being remembered.
We are following three big stories at 10:30.
The Department of Justice is under the microscope, accused of acting as a political weapon. Why one congressman is now calling to abolish the department altogether.
Baltimore City Council members meet for a public safety hearing, but they seemed reluctant to talk about juvenile crime. What happened when Fox 45 News pressed them for answers?
A Baltimore man is sentenced to more than 8 years in prison in a federal drug conspiracy and gun case, the bigger investigation it's a part of to crack down on Baltimore's crime crisis.
And we begin with that case. Officials say Gregory Santos tossed a handgun out of his car while trying to get away from officers in a 2019 traffic stop in South Baltimore. He was arrested a month later, according to U.S. Attorney Eric Barron's office. Santos instructed his girlfriend to sell cocaine and fentanyl still at his home while he was in prison. Santos was charged with drug conspiracy as well as for having a possession of a gun within a school zone. Officials say Santos ditched the gun near an elementary school, allowing authorities to charge him with the federal statute. It is a charge Barron says his office hasn't historically enforced until now. This is at least the fourth arrest of its kind from Eric Barron's office.
2 days after a 16-year-old is shot and killed near his high school, city leaders met for a public safety hearing. Despite the young life loss, Fox 45 News pressed lawmakers to address the rise in youth violence. Fox 45's Vincent Hill has the story.
It was a packed city hall full of city leaders, but one resident I spoke with says it's promises he's heard one too many times.
Across Baltimore City, crime seems to be the same story, different day for most residents, leaving many frustrated in dealing with loss like Larry Small.
I'm tired of seeing people dying. My little cousin, I say last year he died over a dice game.
His cousin's murder still unsolved, just one in a string of juvenile deaths.
I feel like the police not really doing their job. I feel like they know that they got drugs and guns out here. They're not really doing it. They just sitting here, just let it happen.
The committee will have a hearing on legislative oversight.
During a public safety meeting, Commissioner Harrison and City State's Attorney Ivan Bates addressing the city's crime problem, saying the fight on crime starts with partnerships.
Everything we're doing is synchronized.
Meanwhile, Ivan Bates pushing his House Bill 481, which calls for tougher gun sentences. But Councilman Zeke Cohen asking for more after 16-year-old Isaiah Carter was shot and killed near Patterson High School, the district he oversees.
I am curious when we will see, as a city, when our communities can expect that we will disrupt, we will intervene, and we will not tolerate folks who are causing harm, committing crimes pretty blatantly in our neighborhoods.
Fox 45 asking Commissioner Harrison about the number of juvenile deaths in Baltimore.
Not just juvenile crime and juveniles being victims of crime, but we're concerned about juveniles committing crime.
Commissioner Harrison acknowledging Baltimore has a problem with juveniles having access to guns.
Now it's time to figure out how to hold those individuals accountable for illegally carrying those guns and how to change their mind about carrying guns, because carrying a gun is the precursor to the shooting.
For people like Larry Small, those words are ones he's heard before and has little faith that things will change.
At the end of the day, it's going to get worse.
Meanwhile, Commissioner Harrison praising the number of guns taken off the streets of Baltimore last year, but he does acknowledge there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to keeping guns out of teen hands. In Baltimore, Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
In Annapolis, Democrats are pushing bills that would relax penalties for juveniles who commit crimes. One of them, the Youth Accountability and Safety Act, would prevent anyone under the age of 25 from being charged with felony murder. The other is the Youth Equity and Safety Act. It would end the practice of automatically charging juveniles as adults in serious crimes like murder. In Washington, a teenager charged with 2 shootings, one of them deadly, will only spend 6 years in prison. The teen pleaded guilty to the 2 shootings. One killed a teen, the other wounded Washington Commanders player Brian Robinson Jr. Sam Ford with our Sinclair sister station in D.C. explains the law resulted in what some are calling a light sentence.
Under the law, the most time that a juvenile can get who is charged as a juvenile is to be held until the age of 21, even for murder. And that is what the defendant got in this case. The judge said nothing short of the maximum could assure the safety of the community.
The first crime he pleaded guilty to was the attempted robbery of Commanders football player Brian Robinson last August. The 15-year-old juvenile defendant, known only as DB, the likely shooter, as with a 17-year-old, he tried to take Robinson's wallet and Dodge Hellcat car. Robinson disarmed one, the other shot him. Then, 2.5 months later, he was involved in the killing of 15-year-old Andre Robertson in front of the boy's family.
And now my baby's gone for no no good reason at all. He's gone, and I miss him, and I'm hurt.
Robertson's 92-year-old great-great-grandmother grazed by a bullet as she fell next to the grandson.
Andre and I fell in the bushes. So those bullets were just shooting, and every time they would fire a bullet, the ground would shake under me.
The judge sentenced the shooter to DYRS, DC Youth Rehabilitation Services, until age 21. The victim's family member is saying that's not enough.
It's a cycle: carjacking, killing, robbing, pistols, shooting, all of those criminal activities. People need to be held accountable for them.
Defense attorney said DB could get over his emotional and mental issues in only 2 years, not the 6 that the judge has sentenced him to. The family's reaction.
He got mental illness now that he killed somebody's son. He got mental illness. But when he had that gun in his hand, pulling the trigger, he ain't had no mental illness. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Prosecutors made deals with the defense attorneys to get a plea. They also made clear that there were multiple other crimes for which the 15-year-old could have been charged, but he wasn't. Reporting from Washington, I'm Sam Ford for Fox 45.
Tonight, the community is remembering the pedestrian hit and killed in East Baltimore. His name was Alfred Fincher. He died 1 month ago today when the car police were chasing ran a red light, crashed into another car and into a building, causing it to collapse on Fincher, who was just walking along the sidewalk. His family says he was a loving father, brother, and a light in their lives.
He's always been a person with a smile on his face. He was a loving person. He was a family person. He loved his family. That's all he talked about with his family.
We lost the light on that night. So we're gonna light candles just for the world to see that his light is still shining in our lives.
We see it. The state is investigating the deadly crash.
And let's take a look right now at the Fox box on the top left. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is defending his so-called Stop Woke Act and the banning of some books in schools. He says it will not ban books that mention race or gender, just books some claim are pornographic, including the book Genderqueer. There have been calls from parents to ban that book in Baltimore County schools as well.
Top right, Disneyland is removing the song Zippity Doo Dah from its parades. The song is from the 1946 film Song of the South. It has been criticized for portraying racist stereotypes.
The bottom left, a Justice Department probe found Louisville police engaged in a pattern of violating constitutional rights of citizens for years, including one instance where the report says an officer allowed his police dog to attack a 14-year-old black child who was not resisting arrest.
And bottom right, several defendants facing charges related to the January 6th Capitol riots, asking that their trials be delayed. Their attorneys say they need more time to go over newly released footage from that day. The judge has not made a final ruling yet. Well, the Department of Justice remains under intense fire for accusations of acting as a political weapon. Now one congressman threatening to abolish the agency if they can't fix it.
National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has more.
Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz sending a strongly worded message to government agencies accused of pandering to partisan politics.
If we cannot craft authorities that are in line with our values and our belief on the Constitution, and particularly the First Amendment, then yes, I think that we ought to take a meat cleaver rather than an X-Acto knife to some of these agencies.
Gaetz serving on the new House Select Committee investigating the alleged weaponization of the federal government. Several whistleblowers have reportedly come forward with allegations the FBI and DOJ opened domestic terrorism investigations against school parents and pro-life activists, appearing to target Americans ideologically opposed to the current administration.
After the Dobbs decision, what was happening out there was hundreds of churches and crisis pregnancy centers were being attacked. But yet, according to the whistleblower who talked to us under oath, he said they were encouraging him to go look into pro-life leaders, for goodness sake.
An FBI memo out of the Richmond field office showing the agency labeled Catholics who attend traditional Latin masses as threats. Republican senators grilling Attorney General Merrick Garland on the topic last week.
Attorney General Garland, let me just ask you, does your department have a problem with anti-Catholic bias?
Our department
protects all religions.
The FBI also allegedly going after Second Amendment rights, according to the Washington Examiner. Gun Owners of America obtaining documents they say show the Bureau coordinating with hospitals to strip U.S. citizens of the ability to own and purchase firearms.
While Gates's calls to abolish agencies like the DOJ and FBI have little chance at success, the scrutiny comes as polling from last summer shows Americans' faith in government nearing historic lows.
Pew Research reporting just 19% of Americans trust Washington to do what is right most of the time. This Thursday, House Republicans hosting a hearing for their investigation into the alleged weaponization of the federal government. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
I'm Christine Frizzell on Capitol Hill with new revelations about the debate over the origins of COVID-19, why some scientists say it was squashed from the get-go.
And the bus stop forecast for tomorrow morning down to about freezing, mostly clear skies and working into the 50s during the afternoon. Nice day again, but there could be some chances of snow coming up in our forecast. I'll let you know how much and when in my Weather Authority forecast after this.